Hi, Ron. Welcome to a special episode of the Global Trade Show. I'm here at Fremantle Port in Western Australia, and I'm here with Paolo De Carolis. Paolo, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. There's so many things going on over here in Western Australia, and you're so experienced. You're right in the thick of it. I won't kick that off until we talk about your background and why you've come to Fremantle Port, and then we'll dive a bit deeper into the project. So,
Cool.
could I ask you to explain to the viewers your background and why you're here?
Yeah, so maybe my role here at Fremantle Ports, I'm the general manager of major projects. I'm the exec member in charge of major capital projects. I also interface with other major projects that interface with the port, for example, Westport, other major departments who are doing projects in the area that we need to make sure that we're aligned with, etc. So, that's kind of the role I play here, and it's a similar role that I've done in other industries. Most of my career has been in mining,
Mm.
so I spent 25 years in the mining industry, also doing major projects and also in the engineering and asset management field. So recently with companies like Roy Hill and Rio Tinto, doing a lot of work in their infrastructure programs and their major projects programs. So while that was a lovely, rewarding experience, it's also a lot of time away from home
Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of long hours. So, I decided to take a bit of a work break from the mining game and reassess life and understand what the plan was going forward. And then, this opportunity came up at Fremantle Ports. And, from my perspective, being the son of an immigrant, Fremantle Ports holds a special place in our hearts, right? So both my parents, their first exposure to Australia was at the
Oh,
passenger
wow.
terminal down the road where they came in on ships from Italy and Europe. So, there's that special feeling that we have around Fremantle Ports. I think the other thing for me is, the exciting program of work that's going on here and the size of the organisation means that there's ability to do really interesting work, but there's not that bureaucracy that says there's multiple layers of things that you have to go through from a decision-making perspective. So to me, it ticks all the boxes and I'm having a lot of fun.
So, Paolo, for the viewers who might not know, especially over East or other areas around the world, let's talk about Westport. What's Westport all about?
Yeah, so part of my role here at Fremantle Ports is really to act as that interface with other major projects that are sitting within the vicinity and it could impact Fremantle Ports. So that would include things like the defence projects that are happening at the moment. And one of the big ones for us is the Westport project. And what the Westport project is in essence is we know from a population growth perspective and the way the state is going over the next 50, 100 years, that there'll be a significant increase in container trade at the moment. From a Fremantle Port perspective, we've got urban growth that is nearing around the current container terminal. We have opportunities to increase our current capacity, but we know at some stage that capacity here will be limited, both from an urban growth perspective and both from things like rail and road networks, etc. So the Westport project is a proposal to try and combat that by redesigning and rebuilding the container terminal in Kwinana, which is about 30 or 40 kilometres south of here, and building a purpose-built container terminal in Kwinana. Pretty ambitious project. It's a significant project. It's been on the go from a West Australian government perspective for a little while at the moment, gaining a lot of momentum. There's some preliminary engineering design done from a Westport and a lot of environmental and a lot of stakeholder engagement at the moment, with the hope to finalise the plan for a new container terminal for Western Australia.
Yeah. I think the government's got a separate department just on Westport. Is that right?
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
So there is a Westport office that's working dedicated on this, and their role is to deliver the container terminal. We act as kind of an owner and user rep for that at the moment in terms of understanding and applying some of that operational learnings into that design.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as you say, that connection that you've got from your own past and history
Yeah.
is really special, and thanks for sharing that
No
with
worries.
us. The main thing I wanted to sort of dive in deeper with you is, I suppose, the Kwinana Bulk Terminals, KBT, affectionately known as. That's your baby, so to speak.
It is.
So maybe let's start by talking about the overall scope of what KBT is all about.
Yeah, so maybe taking one step back for everyone who's not proficient with what Fremantle Ports does, we have an inner harbour and an outer harbour operation. Inner harbour you can see behind us in terms of container terminals and ro-ro, etc., that does a lot of that trade. We also operate what's called the outer harbour, which consists of Kwinana Bulk Terminal and Kwinana Bulk Jetty, and they're more our bulk trade terminals at the moment. So in the Kwinana Bulk Jetty space, that's a fuel, fertiliser, those sorts of things from a terminal perspective. And Kwinana Bulk Terminals is in a similar area, and that trades in more of our clinker, our slag and gypsum products, etc., from an import perspective. So we try and operate them as kind of overall ecosystems and work through it from that perspective. The KBT facility was a 1950s, 1960s BHP build facility. So it's been going for very many years. As I like to say to people, if you're an infrastructure nerd like me, seeing machinery that old is really cool.
Yeah.
The maintenance guys will probably disagree with me in terms of what it takes to keep that sort of gear going. So now we're at a stage with that terminal that we are getting to its end of life. We are spending a lot more money to keep that terminal going. Pretty critical from a state perspective. It's the sole clinker import facility into Western Australia. So for all the big infrastructure projects that are happening here that require cement and cement-like products, it's absolutely crucial from that perspective. So, we're looking at the moment in terms of what are the options for us from an asset perspective there, bearing in mind that there's a few things going on there. The first thing, as I mentioned, is that age of the asset.
Yeah.
The second thing we've got going on is we need to facilitate a Westport footprint going forward. And at the moment, the preferred location for that Westport footprint overlays the current wharf. So we have to do something about that. We've also got times of the year where we have a bit of congestion issues in Kwinana. So we're trying to facilitate a little bit more trade and understand the trade going forward. So, there's quite a convoluted and problem statement from our perspective, but we're well on the way from a solution.
Yeah, I think, as you say, there's many sort of areas you've got to try and please right across the whole supply chain here in that precinct, and there's definitely opportunities. I think a challenge for you, especially, which is probably different to most greenfield projects, is where you've got to ensure continuity of that clinker flow and all the other associated products and services. So you have to balance that continuity between, instead of just letting rip and go for a greenfield site. So what's the industry engagement been like?
Yeah, we spend a lot of effort with our customers and stakeholders, etc. And from a Kwinana perspective, our customers are very integrated into our operations. They've got conveyors into our operations, piping into our operations, or whatever. So their supply chains are built around the engineering and the design of our terminal. So we've had to spend a lot of time with customers to understand their needs, understands what's possible, etc., especially when we're talking about what trade goes over what wharf, etc. The brownfields aspects is always an interesting one. It's much more fun than greenfields if you're an adrenaline junkie, which I try not to be, but end up in these situations anyway, though. And look, from a brownfields perspective, it just requires a little bit more planning, right? You can't be simple in terms of you can build whatever you want to build or demolish what you want to demolish. There needs to be a sequence to how we do things. We need to plan things out a little bit better. And it involves a lot more coordination with our operations and maintenance teams and the coordination with our customer teams to make sure that we're not interrupting that supply chain. So our goal throughout this project is to complete this project and upgrade pretty much a lot of the facilities on that site without interruptions to any of our current production, our current products coming over the berth. So.
Great. Thanks, Paolo. That leads me into my next question, which is around, forecast timelines. Obviously, am I right? It's probably the biggest infrastructure project in 100 years, I think, for WA. It's
probably for Fremantle Ports. Obviously, from a WA perspective, there've been other infrastructure projects of this size, but certainly for Fremantle Ports, it's a bit of a new territory for us, and given the size and magnitude of the project. Where we're at the moment is we're in that what we call a PDP phase, which is that design, approvals and business case phase of the project. So we're narrowing in on understanding that base design, which will occur pretty much shortly, which will turn into a business case that we want to submit for both federal and state approvals later on this year. We're plodding along with primary and secondary approvals, so environmental approvals, heritage, all those sorts of things, as well as enablers to make sure that once that funding does come through, we can get on with doing what we have to do from a site perspective. We're obviously in partnership with Westport on this project, so they're helping us out from an approvals perspective and leveraging some of the approvals work that they've done in the area as well. They're also responsible for delivering some of the civil infrastructure for us for this project. So part of this project requires the wharf to be relocated 1 kilometre or so away from where it is at the moment. And we need to build causeways and we need to build new wharfs, and they'll be providing that infrastructure for us as part of the project. And we'll put on materials handling assets and also redevelop the landside perspective. So these assets, you're not talking 10, 20 years, you're talking 50 and 100 year timeframes that you're trying to design for, which is really an interesting discussion to have, because if you think of what the world was like 50 years ago, you would never predict that we're in an AI world at the moment. So it's really hard to understand what the world would look like in 50 years' time, but we need to take a pragmatic approach to figuring that out so that we make sure we future-proof these assets. And it's kind of back to what you were saying as an important consideration in our design process and our engagement process. And in that regard, the only thing you can do is engage as broadly as you can with customers, stakeholders, etc., and try and develop that kind of functional requirements that you need, and then turn that into a pragmatic engineering design. So you're not over-capitalizing, but you've also got a facility that can grow as the state grows.
Yeah. Well, I think that what I wanted to sort of close off with, Paolo, is two areas actually. What's been the most challenging part of your role thus far compared to some of your other historical roles, which have been really impressive? I did sort of check out and stalk your LinkedIn a bit. And what would be a wish list that you'd like to, I suppose, explain to some of our viewers who are all supply chain and trade orientated around, what they don't know, or what you'd love to express to them about KBT as a project?
Yeah, maybe the challenge for me is, I've come from organisations that have been set up to do this, and they do it quite often. If you're in the mining industry, infrastructure delivery of this magnitude happens on a year in, year out process, right? So you've got the processes, the teams, the systems. I think one of the appeals for me at Fremantle Ports is, while we have those systems and we deliver sustaining capital programs, we have to scale those systems up to deliver a program like this. And that's pretty exciting. So, we're building the car while we're driving the car, which is an interesting aspect and fun to do. And we've been given a lot of support from board and exec down to be able to do that work and understand, all right, well, how will Fremantle Ports execute this project, and working through that. And we have kind of some definitive ways and understanding, and there's comfort within the organisation of what we're trying to do. But from a challenge perspective, that was one that was well and truly clear coming into this job, and one of the actual attractions of this job going forward. What would like to see? Obviously, the engagement from both customers, industry is really important for us. Like I spoke about the fact that this has got to be a 50-year asset life, and we can't get that right unless we've got the real engagement from both customers, from industry, and really understanding what that looks like. So, to me, that'd be the ask. We're doing a lot of effort and a lot of work from a stakeholder engagement perspective, but we need as much information as we can at the moment, especially in this formative phase. You only get one crack to design these sorts of things. You have to get it right. When we're halfway through construction, trying to change a design or accommodate something else is very difficult. So the time is now in terms of getting as much information as we can to get this right the first time.
Well, wonderful. I know you're a very busy man. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and speak to our audience about this. It's such a major project that's impacting here, not just in WA, but it'll actually have an Australia-wide impact alone. So congratulations on that, and I'm sure you'll do amazing work with it.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paolo.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.